My name is Derek, and the day everyone awakened their combat skills, I received the most embarrassing set possible. Basic slash, spark, body boost, quick step, that was it. No rare bloodline, no legendary class, no glowing sword falling from the sky. Just 4 beginner skills that every training hall taught to children before lunch. Around me, people awakened advanced techniques with names like Thunderfang, Phantom Spear, and Meteor Guard. The crystal screens lit up with applause, while mine looked like a list of chores. The examiner, Wyatt, stared at my results for so long that I thought the crystal had frozen. Then he tapped it twice and said my skills were all level 1. Everyone laughed. In our world, skills could be trained from level 1 to level 10. Level 10 was perfection. A level 10 basic slash could cut through a thick log. A level 10 spark could light a campfire in the rain. Useful, sure, but nobody became famous for being extremely good at starting fires. Wyatt told me to choose a safe job and avoid monster gates. Gavin, the most talented swordsman in my class, had awakened Storm Edge, an advanced skill that sent blades of wind through steel. He did not insult me directly. That would have been easier. He simply looked at my 4 beginner skills and gave me the same polite expression people used at funerals. Then the awakening crystal flickered. For half a second, a 5th line appeared beneath my skill list. Maximum level, none. I was the only one close enough to see it. The line vanished before Wyatt turned around, and I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. Almost. That night, I went to an abandoned quarry outside the city. I swung a rusty training sword at a stone wall until my hands bled. Basic slash reached level 2 after 100 swings. That was normal. It reached level 3 after 300 more. Still normal. By sunrise, I had reached level 10. The slash carved a clean line through a boulder, exactly as the textbooks promised. I should have stopped there. Everyone stopped there. The skill window even flashed with the familiar golden border that meant mastery. I swung again. The window trembled. Basic slash reached level 11. I laughed so hard I dropped the sword. Then I picked it up and swung 10,000 more times. At level 20, the rusty blade stopped touching the target. The air itself cut for me. At level 30, a casual swing split 5 boulders in a row. At level 40, I aimed too high and sliced the top off a cliff. That was when I realized 2 things. First, my beginner skills truly had no limit. Second, if anyone learned what I could do, every powerful group in the city would try to own me, study me, recruit me, or kill me, so I decided to keep acting weak. Unfortunately, I was terrible at acting weak. The next morning, a wild stone boar charged into the market. Licensed fighters scattered because its hide could resist level 6 weapon skills. I was standing beside a fruit cart, holding a wooden practice sword. I told myself to use a tiny amount of power. I used basic slash at level 12. The wooden sword snapped. The pressure wave passed through the boar, cut every apple on the cart into perfect slices, shaved a stripe through the street, and split a fountain behind me. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then the fruit seller looked at the neat piles of apple slices and asked whether I worked in catering. I said yes. That ridiculous lie should have ended immediately, but the city was full of people who saw what they expected to see. A boy with beginner skills could not possibly have cut a monster in half, so everyone decided the boar must have hit a damaged stone, the fountain must have cracked earlier, and the apples were apparently part of an aggressive demonstration. I went home with one important lesson. Power was easy. Using exactly the right amount of power was going to be much harder. I spent the next month training in places where nobody sensible would go. I practiced quickstep inside a canyon filled with falling rocks. At level 10, I could dodge them. At level 25, I could run between raindrops. At level 50, the rocks appeared frozen while I walked around them. I started using the falling debris as chairs because I could sit down, think, and move before gravity noticed. Body boost was even more absurd. At level 10, it doubled my strength for a few seconds. At level 30, I could lift a wagon. At level 60, I could punch a crater into the ground. At level 80, I sneezed while the skill was active and blew the doors off an abandoned warehouse. Spark seemed harmless at first. It created a flame the size of my thumb. I trained it by lighting candles, then torches, then wet logs, then stones. By level 40, the flame turned blue. By level 70, it floated above my palm like a tiny star and melted sand into glass. That was when I renamed it Fireball in my head, even though the skill window stubbornly called it Spark. The training made me stronger, but it also made me broke. Repairing accidental craters was expensive, and pretending I had not caused them was exhausting. So I registered for the lowest rank at the Hunter Hall. Wyatt was there, testing new applicants. He remembered me immediately. Basic slash? I nodded. He sighed like I had personally disappointed the concept of swords. The first test was to cut a straw target. I reduced basic slash to level 3 and made the cleanest cut I could. The target fell, so did the wall behind it. I had forgotten that skill control improved along with skill level. Even when I lowered the output, my technique had become impossibly precise. The slash traveled through a crack in the wall and separated a support beam. Wyatt stared at the damage, I stared at the target, then I pointed at Gavin, who was testing on the next lane. Gavin raised both hands. I did not do that. My attempt to look innocent failed, but Wyatt still could not accept the obvious answer. He marked the wall as old construction and moved me to the monster test. The test creature was a horned wolf, sealed behind a barrier. Low-rank applicants were supposed to survive for 1 minute. I planned to dodge quietly. The barrier opened, the wolf ignored me and leaped toward Wyatt. I used quickstep. To everyone else I vanished. I grabbed the wolf by the tail, spun it around, tied its tail around its own horns, placed it back in the center of the arena, and returned to my starting position before anyone blinked. The wolf landed in a confused knot. Wyatt looked at Gavin again. Gavin looked offended. I am standing over here, Yitsandan Badi Bandarin. I passed the test, but Wyatt gave me the lowest possible license because my results were inconsistent and deeply suspicious. That suited me perfectly. Low-ranked gates paid poorly, but they were safe places to train. The first gate I entered was a moss-covered ruin full of slime monsters. Other hunters hated slimes because cutting them only made smaller slimes. I loved them. 1 slime became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. Every target counted towards skill experience. I spent 6 hours slicing slimes into pieces so small, they became a shining green fog. Basic / reached level 100. The moment the skill changed, the whole ruin went silent. My sword felt lighter than air, and a new effect appeared. Concept cut. I could choose what my / would cut, not just objects, properties. I tested it on a burning torch, and cut the heat away from the flame. The fire kept glowing, but it became cold enough to touch. I cut the stickiness from a slime, and it turned into harmless green water. I cut the sound from my footsteps and walked in perfect silence. Then the gate boss appeared. It was a giant slime shaped like a cathedral bell, and inside its body floated the weapons of every hunter it had consumed. The creature dropped on me with enough weight to crush a house. I used basic / level 100, and chose to cut its momentum. The giant slime stopped 1 inch above my head. It hung in the air, trembling like confused jelly. I stepped aside, restored its momentum, and watched it slam into the floor so hard that it knocked itself unconscious. That was the first time I understood how dangerous my skills could become. A stronger / was impressive, a / that could cut the rules of a fight was unfair, and I had only reached level 100. My quiet life ended 3 days later, when Gavin challenged me in front of the hunter hall. He had watched the wolf test. He had also heard that I cleared a slime gate alone in record time. Gavin was proud, but he was not stupid. He knew accidents did not happen around one person that often. A crowd formed as he drew his sword. He asked for one exchange. His strongest technique against my basic / I tried to refuse. He attacked anyway. Storm Edge at level 10 was exactly as terrifying as the training manuals claimed. Wind wrapped around his blade until the sword looked 20 feet long. The pressure cracked windows across the street. Hunters backed away, certain that one hit would send me through a building. I raised my cheap iron sword. Gavin swung. I used basic / level 100 and chose to cut only the technique. The 2 attacks met with a sound like thunder folding in half. His storm blade vanished. My / kept going, but because I had selected the technique as the only target, it passed through Gavin, his sword, the street, and every building behind him without leaving a mark. For 1 second, Gavin thought he had won. Then every cloud above the city split into 2 perfect halves. Sunlight poured down through a line that stretched from one horizon to the other. The crowd became so quiet that I heard someone drop a coin. Gavin lowered his sword. He looked at the divided sky, then at my beginner skill window, then back at the sky. Level 10, he asked. I nodded. It was technically a lie, and technically hilarious. Wyatt pushed through the crowd, grabbed my wrist, and forced my skill window open. Basic / displayed level 10 because I had learned to hide the higher value behind the mastery border. He examined it 3 times. The crowd decided Gavin's technique had malfunctioned. Gavin did not. From that day forward, he followed me whenever he could. Not because he liked me, and not because he hated me. He wanted proof. He kept appearing outside gates, in training fields, and once on the roof of my apartment. I finally asked why he was on my roof. He said he was studying air pressure. I told him to study somewhere else. While Gavin hunted for my secret, a more serious problem entered the city. Cole ran the strongest criminal hunting crew in the lower districts. He recruited desperate beginners, forced them into dangerous gates, took their rewards, and abandoned anyone who became injured. Nobody could prove it, because survivors were too afraid to speak. Cole heard about my strange test results and decided I would make useful bait. His men approached me outside a low-rank gate and offered to let me join a special expedition. The smiles were fake, the weapons were poisoned, and the map they showed me placed the weakest member at the front. I accepted immediately, not because I trusted them. Because Harper had been trying to arrest Cole for months. Harper was an investigator who solved monster-related crimes by walking into dangerous places with no fear and very little patience. She had questioned me after the market incident and clearly did not believe my catering story. I found her, explained that Cole's crew had invited me into a gate, and proposed a simple plan. I would make them reveal everything. She would wait outside and collect them afterward. Harper looked at my low-rank license, my beginner skills, and the cheerful expression I probably should not have been wearing. You know they plan to sacrifice you, she said. I know. And you still want to go? I need skill experience. She stared at me for a long moment, then handed me a recording crystal. The gate opened into an underground city, buried beneath black sand. Cole's crew led me through narrow streets, while pretending to be friendly. They told me to open treasure chests, step on suspicious tiles, and walk first into dark rooms. I did everything they asked. The first chest fired 100 darts. I used quickstep, caught each dart, replaced the poison tips with berries from my lunch, and returned them to the air. The crew watched the darts strike me, then froze when all 100 bounced off my body-boosted skin and scattered berries across the floor. I pretended to faint. They cheered. The second trap released a stone serpent. I used basic slash to cut its hostility. The serpent became gentle, curled around me like a pet, and carried me through the ruins while the criminals chased us on foot. I pretended I could not control it. They believed that too. By the time we reached the boss chamber, Cole's men were furious, exhausted, and covered in berry juice. The chamber contained a giant iron idol, with 6 arms, and a furnace in its chest. Cole's plan was finally revealed through the recording crystal. His crew admitted they had used dozens of beginners as bait, and they intended to lock me inside while they escaped with the treasure. So I helped them. I stepped into the chamber. They slammed the door. The idol woke up. Then I cut the locks from the outside doors, cut the criminal's sense of direction, and cut the weight from the iron idol. The 6-armed monster floated through the ceiling like a balloon. Cole's crew ran in circles because every corridor felt like the wrong corridor. They screamed, blamed one another, and eventually returned to the boss chamber, where I was sitting on a treasure chest eating the berries I had collected from the darts. I restored the idol's weight. It crashed behind them and blocked the exit. When Harper entered through the gate with enforcement officers, Cole's men were already begging to be arrested. The whole operation should have been a perfect victory. Then Harper looked up. The iron idol was stuck halfway through the ceiling. She looked at me. I looked at the idol. Unstable construction, I said. She put away the recording crystal. Your lies are getting worse. Cole was not inside the gate, so the arrests only wounded his organization. He responded by placing a reward on me. That was exactly what I wanted. Criminals began following me through the city. I acted terrified, and led them into increasingly embarrassing disasters. One group attacked me in an alley, so I used quickstep to swap their boots while they were running. They crashed into one another, rolled down a staircase, and landed in a patrol wagon. Another group tried to poison my dinner. I used basic slash to cut the poison from the soup, then cut the flavor from their food, and placed it into mine. I enjoyed the best meal of my life while they chewed tasteless meat, and wondered why I was not dying. A third group tried to drop a building on me. That one was rude. I activated body boost at level 120, caught the entire building on one shoulder, walked it 2 blocks, and set it down in an empty lot. Then I put the attackers inside the abandoned foundation, and returned the building on top of them like a lid. I left enough space for air and a sign pointing Harper toward the entrance. The city began telling stories about a ghost who protected weak hunters. Since nobody believed I was responsible, the stories gave the ghost a different description every day. Some said it was a giant with burning eyes. Others said it was an old swordsman. One witness insisted it was a furious restaurant worker carrying a wooden spoon. I encouraged that version. While Cole wasted money attacking me, I trained. Quickstep reached level 150 and gained a new effect called Path Claim. When I moved, I could decide the route I had taken after reaching the destination. I could step forward, appear behind an enemy, and make the path curve through every weapon in the room. To observers, the weapons would shatter before I seemed to move. Body boost reached level 200. I no longer enhanced only muscle. I could strengthen anything my body did. My eyesight could see across the city. My hearing could detect a heartbeat through stone. I could strengthen my balance and stand on drifting smoke. I could strengthen my lungs and shout hard enough to knock arrows from the sky. Spark reached level 180. The flame above my palm became white. I took it into a high-rank volcanic gate, where a team of archmages was struggling against a creature made of living magma. The monster absorbed fire spells, so the mages tried ice, lightning, gravity, and finally an ultimate spell that created a frozen comet. The comet hit, the monster ate it, everyone prepared to retreat. I stepped forward with my tiny beginner flame. The lead archmage laughed until I released the skill. Spark at level 180 did not create ordinary fire. It compressed heat into a sphere smaller than my fist. The air bent around it. Stone turned liquid before the sphere came close. The volcanic monster, a creature that had lived inside magma for centuries, backed away. But Kipari, tossed the spark upward. It expanded into a miniature sun. The entire cavern became white. The monster did not burn. Burning was too slow. Its body separated into glowing particles, and the artificial sun swallowed every piece. The volcanic lake below us cooled because my spell had pulled the heat out of the environment to feed itself. The archmages stood beneath a floating star created by a beginner skill. I realized I had made a serious mistake, so I pointed at the lead archmage and shouted, "Amazing spell!" Everyone turned toward him. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the miniature sun, and made the worst decision of his career. He nodded. The other mages erupted in celebration. I quietly used basic slash to cut the light from the spell, then quick step to leave before anyone asked questions. Gavin was waiting outside the gate. He had apparently joined the expedition at the last moment and watched everything. "That was Spark," he said. It was very advanced Spark. Spark stops at level 10, so I have been told. He drew his sword, not to attack, but to point at the gate. The Archmage is claiming he created a new sun spell. That sounds impressive. He also fainted when someone asked him to do it again. That sounds less impressive. Gavin lowered the sword. For the first time he smiled. You are either the greatest fighter alive, or the most dangerous idiot I have ever met. I told him I could be both. That was when the city alarm began. A red gate had opened beneath the central arena. Red gates did not close until everything inside was dead, and thousands of spectators were trapped above it. The arena floor collapsed before evacuation could begin. I arrived with Gavin and found a hole the size of a city block swallowing seats, stone and screaming people. Below the arena was a red dungeon filled with jagged towers. Winged beasts poured upward like smoke. Licensed hunters formed defensive lines, but the creatures were too fast. Every second, more civilians slipped toward the pit. Lakipari. I activated body boost and strengthened my voice. Everyone jump. It was a terrible instruction, but fear makes people surprisingly obedient. Hundreds of spectators leaped from broken platforms. I used basic/level 140 and cut their downward momentum. They stopped in the air, not slowed, stopped. People floated above the red gate, kicking and shouting while I used quickstep to move them one by one onto stable ground. Gavin cut down the winged beasts that came close, and for several minutes we worked without speaking. His storm edge had improved. He no longer tried to overpower everything. He watched my movements and attacked the gaps I created. Then the boss climbed out. It looked like a dragon built from cathedral ruins. Towers formed its horns, windows glowed along its ribs, and a massive bell swung inside its chest. Each time the bell rang, gravity reversed. The first toll sent people flying upward. I cut the sound. The second toll traveled through the ground. I cut the vibration. The dragon opened its mouth and released a river of black flame. I threw my level 200 spark into it. My miniature sun consumed the black fire, expanded, and floated above the arena like a second daylight. The stone dragon roared and spread wings made of bridges. That was when Cole's hired killers attacked me from behind. Even during a city disaster, Cole was determined to be annoying. They used concealment skills and rare weapons designed to pierce magical defenses. I could have knocked them out instantly, but Harper needed Cole connected to the attacks, so I let one blade strike my back. It shattered. I turned slowly. The attackers froze. I smiled and asked whether Cole had paid in advance. One of them cursed and activated an escape crystal. I used basic slash to cut the destination from the teleportation spell. The crystal still activated, but without a destination, it teleported the entire group 3 feet upward. They appeared in the air, fell into a snack stand, and were buried under roasted nuts. Harper arrived seconds later and heard them shouting Cole's name while trying to escape. She gave me a look that said she knew I had planned the entire thing. I had. The dragon crashed down again. Its stone claws crushed half the arena. Hunters attacked the joints, but every broken piece flew back into place. The creature was connected to the dungeon itself. As long as the red gate remained, it would keep rebuilding. So I used basic slash on the connection. The result was bigger than expected. A glowing chain became visible between the dragon and the gate. My slash severed it, crossed the dungeon, continued through every tower below, and opened a trench across the red world all the way to the horizon. The dragon stopped healing. Gavin launched Storm Edge into the exposed bell in its chest. The bell cracked. I used Quickstep, climbed the falling pieces of his windblade as if they were stairs, reached the dragon's head, and punched downward with body boost level 220. The dragon became a crater. The shockwave flattened every remaining tower inside the gate. The miniature sun above the arena flickered, pulled the leftover dungeon energy into itself, and collapsed into a glowing marble that landed in my hand. For a moment, everyone saw me standing in the crater, with a star in one hand, and a cheap sword in the other. There was no explanation large enough to hide behind. Wyatt pushed through the crowd, and stared at me like he had finally solved a puzzle he hated. He demanded to see my real skill window. I refused. Gavin stepped beside me. Show him. Harper crossed her arms. I would also appreciate fewer lies. Thousands of survivors watched, so I opened the window. Basic slash, level 147, Spark, level 204, Body Boost, level 223, Quickstep, level 191. The numbers hung in the air. People laughed. They thought it was fake. Someone claimed the red gate had damaged the display. Someone else said I was using an illusion. Wyatt touched the window, checked the mana pattern, and went pale. Before he could speak, I closed it. That should have been the end of my secret. Instead, nobody believed it. The truth was simply too ridiculous, and for a while, that worked in my favor. After the red gate, my rank rose overnight. The Hunter Hall wanted to classify me as an elite, but the ranking machines could not measure me. The strength device exploded when I tapped it. The speed course recorded that I finished before I started. The magic crystal displayed a drawing of a sun and shut itself off. Wyatt stopped pretending I was normal. He followed me with notebooks, measuring tools, and the haunted expression of a man whose entire education had become incorrect. Gavin began training with me. He still could not exceed level 10 in Storm Edge, but he learned to use it more cleverly. I taught him to bend the wind around corners, hide smaller cuts inside larger ones, and attack from below. He taught me something equally valuable: how to fight without destroying the location I was standing in. Harper used my growing reputation to pressure Cole. His crews disappeared from the streets, his hideouts emptied, and his remaining fighters gathered around an underground arena beneath the old industrial district. Cole finally sent me a direct invitation. He offered a public duel. Everyone knew it was a trap. I accepted because everyone knew it was a trap. Cole's power did not come from heavy armor or brute strength. He used a rare skill called command thread. Thin strands of mana entered objects, monsters, and even wounded people, allowing him to control them like puppets. At level 10, he could manage hundreds of threads at once. His underground arena was built for that skill. The floor, walls, weapons, chains, and gates were all connected to him. The audience was filled with criminals. Captured monsters waited beneath the platform. Prisoners were locked in cages around the edges. Cole stood at the center wearing an ordinary black coat and the confidence of a man who believed he had already won. He told me the duel would end when one of us surrendered. Then he pulled the threads. The entire arena attacked me. Stone spikes erupted from the floor, chains snapped from the walls, blades flew from hidden slots, controlled monsters burst through the gates, even the cages moved, sliding toward a furnace beneath the platform. I used quickstep level 230, the world slowed. I walked through the storm of attacks, but I did not dodge them, I rearranged them. I turned the stone spikes toward the chains, I tied the chains around the monsters, I rotated the flying blades so their flat sides faced the prisoners, I moved every cage onto a safe ledge. I replaced Cole's expensive control rings with onion rings from a vendor outside, then I returned to my starting point. Time resumed, the arena attacked itself, stone shattered chains, chains captured monsters, blades sliced open cage locks. Cole raised his hands and discovered fried onions on his fingers. The audience did not know whether to scream or laugh. I chose both for them by activating body boost on my lungs and laughing so loudly that the ceiling cracked. Cole abandoned the arena controls and sent command threads directly into my body. The strands pierced my skin and wrapped around my nerves. He smiled, believing the fight was over. I let him take control. My arm rose against my will, my sword pointed toward my neck. Cole ordered me to cut myself. I used basic / level 250. The blade moved, but I chose the target. I cut the ownership from his threads. Every strand changed direction. Cole suddenly controlled nothing, while I controlled every thread he had created. I lifted one finger. The arena walls folded inward like a box. The furnace shut, the monster cages locked. Every weapon pointed at Cole. Then I used his own threads to raise his hands, turn him toward Harper's hidden recording crystal, and make him confess. He fought the control, so I strengthened the threads with body boost. He tried to bite his tongue, so I cut the intention from the movement. He tried to use a hidden poison tooth, so I cut the poison from his mouth and transferred the bitterness into the onion rings. Cole confessed to the gate sacrifices, the attacks, the extortion, the kidnappings, and several crimes Harper had not known about. The audience began escaping. They reached the exits and found Gavin waiting. He did not wear armor. He did not need it. Storm Edge filled the stairway with curved blades of wind that sliced belts, bootlaces, weapon straps, and escape crystals without touching skin. Criminals fell into a tangled pile before Harper's officers entered. For the first time, Cole looked afraid. He asked what I was. I released the threads and walked toward him. I am a beginner, I said. Then I hit him with a level 1 body-boosted flick. I had intended to knock him backward. Instead, he flew through 6 walls, crossed the street, and landed inside the city jail. Harper arrived at the hole in the final wall, looked through it, and saw Cole unconscious in an empty cell. She slowly turned toward me. I pointed at the wall. Unstable construction. She almost smiled. Almost. Cole's arrest made me famous, which was inconvenient because I still wanted time to train. People followed me everywhere. Children asked me to cut mountains. Merchants asked me to light furnaces. One restaurant offered free meals if I used Quickstep to deliver food before it cooled. I accepted. For 2 weeks I trained my skills through ridiculous jobs. I used basic / to cut thousands of vegetables without touching the cutting board. Spark cooked every dish from the inside out. Body Boost let me carry the entire restaurant while workers repaired its foundation. Quickstep served 400 customers before the first plate reached a table. Wyatt called it irresponsible skill development. I called it free dinner. My skills passed level 400. Basic / gained distance denial, letting me strike anything I could see. Spark gained fuel choice, letting me choose what the flame consumed. Body Boost gained shared enhancement, allowing me to strengthen anything I touched. Quickstep gained moment theft, letting me borrow seconds from my own future and use them immediately. The city enjoyed peace for 9 days. Then a black tower rose from the lake. It had been sealed beneath the water for centuries, and the Red Gate's collapse had disturbed the ruins around it. The tower climbed into the clouds with half the lake spinning around its walls. Monsters poured from its lower floors. If the summit opened, every creature inside would escape at once. Gavin guarded the entrance. Harper cleared the shore. Wyatt explained why one person could not possibly climb 100 floors. I entered before he finished. The first floor was a desert filled with insects beneath the dunes. I made Spark consume sand. Blue fire raced across the floor and left a glass plane, exposing every monster. The second floor was an ocean with no air. I strengthened my skin until it repelled water, formed a bubble around myself, and ran through the sea. The third floor was a forest where every tree fired spears. I made Spark consume hostility. The trees became peaceful and started growing fruit. On the 20th floor, a maze changed whenever I looked away. I used Quickstep while blinking so rapidly that the walls rearranged themselves into dust. On the 40th, a giant built from stolen weapons attacked. I cut the idea of weapon from its body. It collapsed into a pile of harmless metal. On the 50th, I discovered the entire floor was one living creature. The mountains were teeth. The sky was the inside of its mouth. Instead of killing it, I cut centuries of pain from its body. The beast became calm and launched me upward on one enormous tooth. I broke through 19 floors like a human cannonball. By the time I reached the 80th floor, days had passed outside. There I found a black sphere that absorbed everything. It swallowed my slash, my punch, my flame, and even the momentum from Quickstep. Every attack made it larger, so I stopped attacking. I created the weakest spark possible, a level 1 flame, and let the sphere absorb it. Then I cut the limit from the flame. Inside the sphere, Spark began climbing. Level 10, level 100, level 400. The sphere kept consuming, which only fed the skill. I stole 60 seconds with Quickstep and gave the flame a full minute to grow, while the sphere had no time to adapt. When motion returned, a miniature sun burst out from the inside. The black sphere popped like a soap bubble. On floor 90, thousands of people were frozen inside crystal buildings, trapped by failed expeditions from centuries ago. Breaking the crystal would kill them. Melting it would burn them, so I used basic slash and cut the imprisonment itself. Every crystal wall opened like a flower. I strengthened the giant tooth I had ridden upward and accidentally gave it 6 stone legs. The rescued people climbed onto it, and the living tooth marched down the tower like the world's ugliest rescue wagon. Then the summit opened. The tower's guardian was a silver creature wrapped around the sky. Its body contained doors, rooms, and windows. The tower was not a building. It was the creature's shell. 4 eyes opened. Every skill in my window dropped to level 10. The guardian's field suppressed all abilities to the world's normal maximum. It expected me to become helpless. Instead, I became nostalgic. A beam erased the platform behind me. I dodged with level 10 Quickstep. I cut reflected air currents with level 10 basic slash. I heated narrow lines with level 10 spark and bent my cuts around the guardian's scales. I strengthened only my fingertips and flicked loose scales like spinning coins. The guardian surrounded us with crushing water. I strengthened the bubbles in my lungs until they became harder than stone, then stepped from bubble to bubble through the flood. Its mouth opened. A dark core inside powered the suppression field. I created dozens of level 10 sparks and threw them into the core. Then I used basic slash to cut the separation between them. 10 small flames became one larger flame. 100 became 1000. The suppression field could reduce each skill entering its range, but it could not understand limited results combining after they were already inside. A miniature sun ignited in the core. The field shattered. My real levels returned. I used spark level 800 and chose suppression energy as fuel. White fire erupted through the summit. Clouds vanished. The tower cracked from top to bottom. The guardian tried to flee. I cut its ability to escape, then cut the control marks from its scales. The creature stopped fighting. It was not evil. It had been trapped inside the tower and forced to guard it. I stepped onto its head as the shell collapsed. Below, Gavin and the city hunters watched the living tooth emerge with the rescued prisoners. Behind it, millions of tons of tower debris fell toward the city. I used Quickstep and claimed a path through every stone. One movement carried me across the sky. Every falling block changed direction behind me. Towers became bridges, walls became docks, crystal floors formed shining roads. The collapsed dungeon arranged itself around the lake as a new island district before the first stone touched water. I landed on the Silver Guardian's head. It circled the city once and released a cry that shook the clouds. People saw me riding an ancient sky creature above a lake I had just rebuilt using falling ruins. There was no catering explanation for that, so I waved. The city went wild. After the Black Tower, nobody could keep pretending my skill window was fake. Wyatt built a reinforced awakening crystal on the new island district. Harper stood beside him. Gavin leaned against the Silver Guardian's tail, trying to look calm. I placed my hand on the crystal. Basic slash, level 812. Spark, level 824. Body boost, level 799. Quick step, level 776. The crystal cracked but held. Wyatt insisted I activate body boost once more. I strengthened my heartbeat. The pulse hit the district like a drum. Body boost reached level 800. The crystal exploded. I cut the momentum from every fragment, leaving them floating around my open skill window. Maximum level, none. This time, everyone saw the line. Wyatt sat on the ground. Gavin laughed. Harper nodded like unlimited power was less surprising than one honest answer from me. News spread. Hunters came from distant cities to challenge me. Mages came to study Spark. Training halls asked me to teach. Criminals disappeared before I could bait them into attacking, which was honestly disappointing. I continued training. I cut individual grains of dust from sunlight. I made Spark ignite sound and create musical flames. I strengthened my thoughts until I could plan hundreds of moves at once. I raced the Silver Guardian across the region using Quickstep. It won by biting my coat and throwing me backward. My skills climbed together. Eventually Wyatt built one final crystal. Harper made him place it outside. Thousands gathered around the lake. Gavin stood near the shore. The guardian circled above the clouds. I touched the crystal. Basic slash, level 998. Spark, level 998. Body boost, level 998. Quick step, level 998. Wyatt asked me to activate each skill once. I drew the same cheap sword I had carried during my first exam. For basic slash, I cut the darkness between stars. It was daytime, but a line of night opened across the sky, revealing a river of constellations. Basic slash reached level 999. For spark, I created a flame and chose distance as fuel. The fire consumed the miles between the city and the horizon, making the setting sun appear close enough to touch without moving it from the sky. Spark reached level 999. For body boost, I placed one hand on the island district and strengthened its growth. Foundations settled, young trees rose, cracked towers fused into safe buildings. The entire district became stronger without losing its shape. Body boost reached level 999. For quick step, I took one step. I appeared everywhere around the lake at once. Not copies, not illusions. I had moved through so many paths in the same instant that people saw me standing on every bridge, rooftop, tower, wave, and drifting cloud. Quick step reached level 999. My skill window expanded above the city. 4 beginner skills, 4 impossible numbers. The golden mastery borders shattered into clear fire. The crowd did not laugh. The city cheered. Hunters raised their weapons. Mages lit the sky. The silver guardian looped around the window, tracing the numbers with its body. For one perfect moment, everyone who had mocked me understood. My skills had never been weak, they had only been unfinished. Then the window displayed one final line. Level 999 was not the maximum, it was a threshold. A direction appeared beneath it, pointing beyond the mountains. Far outside every mapped gate, a column of golden light rose into the sky. Something enormous moved inside it. A slash crossed the horizon. The attack traveled hundreds of miles, cutting clouds, cliffs, and air as it came toward the city. I raised my cheap sword. Basic slash level 999 met it above the lake. The collision created a ring of light around the world. Windows shook. Water rose. Every flame bent sideways. My opponent was far beyond the horizon, but through the contact between our techniques, I felt their surprise. Then I felt them laugh. Not with cruelty, with challenge. A second slash began forming. Gavin asked whether I needed help. Harper told me not to destroy another city. Wyatt shouted that the measurement was not complete. I stepped onto the guardian's head and tightened my grip on the sword everyone had laughed at on Awakening Day. Back then, level 10 looked like the end of my path. Now level 999 looked like the first place worth starting from. The second slash came. I swung. And this time, I did not hold back.